Hi, welcome to Westcountry Savings and Loans. We've been talking to quite a few of our housing association partners across the southwest recently, just sharing with them a bit about what we're doing, how we've been faring through the COVID crisis and what we can do working together moving forward. I know not everybody's been able to make those sessions or for us to have a face-to-face session, so we thought we'd record this version so that you can share it with your staff, your teams, and you can take some messages away for your tenants. I'm going to try and keep this really brief. I know people haven't got a lot of time at the moment, so I'm going to run through. I've just done a quick introduction. I'll look very briefly at the current economic outlook. I'll talk about the credit union, what we stand for, what our core messages are generally. Then I'm going to have a little session just on product messages for today, how we've adapted what we're offering to help people during this time. Then going to look through our social media schedule, what we're going to be talking about and the messages we're sharing outside the organisation, and then there's just a little summary at the end with some feedback options and some address details you can use there. So there's a lot of stats on this slide which I won't read through. Basically, the long and the short of any of the economic outlooks, and this was recorded in May, I've since seen other figures and lots more information published across news sites and everywhere else, but generally speaking, the consensus of opinion is we will hit some form of very deep recession throughout the back end of 2020 and into 2021, based on obviously the period of lockdown that we've been in with businesses not operating. It's going to have a massive impact, particularly on the hospitality industry, which I know will affect many of our members up and down the southwest. It's a big industry for us, the tourism obviously. Unemployment's going to get really high, highest levels they reckon since the mid-80s, before gradually falling. The hope is, given the nature of our industries these days, is that actually we will bounce back quite quickly. There's a lot of digital industries and manufacturing is very digital now, so hopefully we can get back up and running again quickly, but there will be a deep downturn. There's also a variable impact based on what's happened now and what will go on in the coming weeks and months. It depends whether you were able to maintain your income at the levels that they were before lockdown, whether you were perhaps furloughed, still having, but with some pay coming in, whether you were reliant on benefits before. And basically, it's going to be different for everybody. There's a lot of talk about, you know, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats, and that's very much a case, I think. And what we want to be is to make sure, obviously, that we can support those living in our poorest areas and make sure we're there for everybody that really needs us. So I just recap slightly on credit unions in general before I move on to talk about how our roles and our products and services have changed during this particular period of time. So I liken credit unions as a bit of a Ronseal description of what we are. Does what it says on the tin. We are credits, so we're all about money, and a union, so we're about bringing people together. So we bring together people who've got a bit of money to save each month with those people who perhaps need to borrow, and we manage that relationship and that exchange with prudence and care, and we make sure that everybody benefits and the community can support each other from a financial perspective. So our core messages are about supporting your local community, working cooperatively, collaboratively, and essentially what we run is a community bank. It's quite a trendy phrase, a trendy term, but that's essentially what we are. Before I move on from this, I tend to sort of keep to the top 5 reasons I think there are to join us. I think they're a good summary of what we're about. So firstly, it's about affordable, responsible loans. So that means making sure that everybody has access to fair credit. We'd love to live in a society where people don't need to borrow, but unfortunately that utopia doesn't exist. People quite often live either beyond their means or only just within their means, and when things go wrong, perhaps washing machine's broken or car's broken down, or you have some urgent costs that you need to pay for, people don't have the means these days to cover those unexpected bills. So they do need to borrow, and we want to make sure that they can borrow from us, that we're here for everybody for the long term, and so that those people aren't having to go to high cost payday lenders, loan sharks, people who are going to lock them into a cycle of debt that they'll find it very, very difficult to get out of in the future. Second reason is that we're a really safe place to be, to keep your savings. Our savings are covered by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, so they're protected up to £85,000. So you know that you can bank safely with us whilst helping the community. And we've also got some really great products which I'll talk about later, but one in particular where you can win monthly cash prizes. We're an ethical organisation. We don't have shareholders. We're not here to make a profit. We are literally here to benefit the community who want to help each other financially. Anything that we make over and above our running costs goes back to our savers in form of a dividend payment, which is a bit like an interest payment, if you will. So I think for a lot of people these days that sort of ethical nature of our organisation is really important. Fourth reason I suggest that people might like to be part of a credit union is that you can manage your money on your own terms. You know, you might think that it was a bit of a backward step to join a credit union and it's sort of a bit of a you know, not quite as technically savvy, but actually now we have online banking where members can log in, move money, make payments, and just have access to all their accounts. We've got a mobile banking app which you can access on your phone and smart devices, and also we launched last year Nevo, which is our secure instant messaging app. Works a bit like WhatsApp and has been really popular with members. If you've got a quick question that you want to run by us, or you know, you want to make a withdrawal, or you want to find out something, you know, none of us really has got the time to be sat on a call waiting, you know, to be let in and following a menu option and everything else. So you can just fire us a Nevo and we can answer it really quickly and just get straight back to people. So a lot of our members are really benefiting from the launch of Nevo. And finally, they're just there that everybody has a say in this organisation. It's one member, one vote. We have an annual general meeting every year where the volunteer board of directors come in and they walk through what's happened for the last 12 months in the credit union and what the plans are for the next 12 months. Members can be physically there and ask questions and talk about what the plans are going to be and how they'll impact their finances, and ultimately they can decide whether those plans go ahead or not by voting a yes or no. So I've talked a bit about credit unions in general, what we're about, how we help people, what we're here to do in our communities. I just now want to talk specifically about our products and where we are at the moment in terms of the crisis and lockdown and what it's meant for us. So our core product suite, if you like, obviously our savings and loans. From a loans perspective, we have seen a little dip in applications. Obviously people aren't borrowing at the rate they would have been. There's a bit of uncertainty about what's going to happen job-wise in the future, so people don't want to commit to big payments right now, which is understandable. And also we'd normally see quite a few loans for holidays and other sorts of plans like that, which this year obviously aren't as appropriate. We are still seeing loans coming in. Lots of them are for household supplies. We don't normally advocate that people borrow for those sort of basic essentials, but we do understand at the moment with, you know, having to bulk buy in some places or having to make, you know, a weekly trip to a supermarket or whatever, that sometimes it's important to have a bit more cash up front to make those payments. We've got a couple of key products that are proving really popular at the moment. First is our child benefit loan, where members arrange for their child benefit to be paid to us. We can then lend them up to £500. It's just a short-term loan, 6 to 12 months. They don't go through the normal credit check. We obviously run our affordability checks on bank accounts and things to make sure they can afford the repayments. But it can just be that sort of quick emergency cash in some cases that people need to get their hands on. Also, we launched at the beginning of the crisis a key worker loan, which has a special reduced rate. We felt as a credit union and that our members would want to support those people who are staying at work in order to keep the rest of us safe from the virus. So we launched a much reduced rate there specifically for people who are listed as key workers on the government website. So just onto savings then. That's a real huge message at the moment. Everybody is just to save. save what you can, put it away for a rainy day, whatever it is to come. We don't know what's to come, so we just desperately want people to make sure that they are protected from any future shocks as best as they can be. If there's any spare cash now, put it aside, make sure you're saving. We've got we've got a range of accounts, instant access accounts and things like that, but two of our most popular are our Prize Saver, which is a government-run scheme launched by the Treasury at the end of last year, where for every £1 in your savings account you have one entry into the next month's prize draw to win cash. I think it's up to a maximum of £200. There's one £5,000 and 20 £20 prizes up for grabs, and we had a winner in January from the December draw, and we had two winners in May, all at £20 each. So it's definitely worth being part of. There's only 15 credit unions in the country that are part of the scheme, so it does make the odds a little bit more favourable. We also have our Christmas Saver, which has always been popular with members. You can save up to £200 a month, and then we pay 1% gross at the end of October. So rather than just being available to receive the dividend, they actually get a guaranteed 1% payout. And the payout at the end of October comes just at the right sort of time for spending on Christmas presents and making sure you've got all your Christmas shopping up and ready to go. So those are our core kind of bread and butter, if you like. We do have another few strings to our bow and things that members are finding really useful. So the first of those is our managed accounts. So this, we're quite conscious that not everybody has the same financial sophistication as others, and perhaps struggle to maintain control of the family budget. And the managed account really is to help those people. So they arrange to have their salary or benefits paid to us. We then pay their priority bills, like their rent or council tax or whatever it may be, and then the balance is returned to the member on their debit card. Particularly useful for perhaps where people have moved to universal credit and now are trying to cope with a monthly payout rather than having each weekly amount. It's just making it a bit easier for them to budget. And then finally, the Westcountry MasterCard debit card, which we launched last year, has all the features of a normal MasterCard. So you've got contactless, chip and pin, all those sorts of things. You can shop online and in store. It's great for our members because those who want top-up loans, they now no longer have to wait for the approved loan to be added to a prepaid card. It can literally just go straight into their normal loan app, and the funds are available on the card to spend straight away. They can also set up recurring payments on there, which you can't do from other accounts. So if you haven't got a bank account and you need to set up direct debits for things like your TV licence, then it can be done using the MasterCard. So when we first started working with all the housing associations across the Credit Union Sustainability Partnership project, we kept feeding in a sort of a constant stream of what social media messages we were talking about, so you could feed those into your own plans. We met in November last year, the communications teams from each housing association, and we kind of agreed that actually it was better to have an idea up front of what was coming so that those messages could be added in as and when they were appropriate. We also spoke at that meeting about building a calendar for 2020 of the types of messages that are appropriate for you guys, for your tenants and things at certain times of the year. So for example, things like when people are moving home, moving to a new property, sometimes they're not aware that they need to pay for the carpets and the white goods. So perhaps talking about moving home costs and the loans that you can get from us to cover those were quite appropriate on a regular basis. We started that process in Q1 this year, and we were sort of working really well, feeding in what was coming and sticking to the calendar as we had discussed it. But then obviously with coronavirus, we've had to kind of move away from that. Some of those messages weren't as appropriate, but we will try where we can to keep including the messages that we talked about and phase them back in as and when they become appropriate. So I'll just quickly run through what we've got sort of coming up. We've always talked and we've had quite a lot of success with our school uniform loans in the past. usually obviously around July, August time, getting the kids back to school, it can be a massive strain on a family budget in that 1 month to make sure they've got kids with all the uniform and school shoes and bags and everything else and all set up ready to go. We are talking about it at the moment because I know obviously some of the schools are just starting to go back, and A, they may have grown out of their uniforms, it's been quite a long time since they were in them, and B, some of the schools are suggesting that children have a clean set of uniform every single day, and for obviously virus containment purposes, and that's just beyond some families. They can't afford to do that, so they may need a loan from us to help them get back to school safely. Lots of messages coming up about credit unions, the feel good messages, ethical finance, about people enjoying being part of their community bank, because those are the real core values of what we're doing, and we know that those resonate with people at the moment, particularly where perhaps those people haven't been able to help before. At least they can feel like they're doing that now. Lots of loan shark messages as well. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Stop the Loan Sharks team that help throughout this area. But we know that loan sharks will be prevalent at the moment, and they will be preying on people. We might not be seeing them at the moment, but in sort of 6 or 12 months time, when they start hiking up their charges and pushing people to make extra payments, you know, that's when we're going to start to see people suffering. So we just don't want people to go to loan sharks. If they need to borrow, the message is please speak to your credit union before you go and just, you know, borrow off a friend from somewhere else. A bit like the school uniform sort of stuff, getting people back on the road and back to work. Perhaps if the car's been off the road for a while, might need some work to get it going again. If loans are needed for that sort of thing, we'd really prefer people to come to us. Scams as well, unfortunately, you know, like loan sharks, criminals who are committing financial fraud are out in force at the moment, so we're trying to make sure our members are aware, particularly online and when dealing with their finances, what the sorts of scams to look out for. Mail order is another thing we've spotted recently. Obviously, with everybody stuck at home, they're not going to the shops, so they've sort of got a bit more time to browse and are perhaps shopping online where they wouldn't have done before. What we want to make sure is that people are aware of the rate that they're paying for their credit that they've had. Sometimes it can be a really, really high APR, so it might be worth just a quick check on our loan calculator to see if somebody could pay off that debt and then repay at a much lower price. Again, savings, lots of savings messages in plan. I've kind of said save for a rainy day as many times as I can, and there's only so many ways you can say that. So I've kind of turned it around and I've said, look, what have you got to lose? If you save now, if you face some financial hardship, fantastic, you've got some means behind you to help protect you from the financial shock. If you don't face any difficulties and you carry on earning, then fab, you've got enough money to treat yourself to something nice. We just had also as well over the last couple of months, we've been telling people about post office accounts. You can no longer have your benefits paid into a post office account. You can have them paid into a credit union account. So if people can't get bank or building society accounts, then they can come to us and have one of ours. And then another message that just tagged on the bottom of here, this came out of a conversation with one of the housing associations last week. Whilst people are off at the moment, perhaps with a bit more time on their hands, now is a really good time just to get on top of your finances, work out your budget, what have you got coming in, what have you got going out. If you're going to face some difficult times down the road, if your income may drop off, it's better to know now what the likely impact of that's going to be, rather than get there and then go through the hardship of sort of having to then work out where everything is, what you're paying out and that sort of thing. So that's it from me. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this useful. I hope there was some relevant information in there that you can take away with you. If you've got any questions, anything you want to say, any comments, anything you can help us with, please get in touch. We are a small non-profit organisation. We haven't got a massive research budget. We can't go out and, you know, take the temperature of what it's like for all our communities across the southwest. So we're relying on our partners and our contacts to tell us what's happening in the communities, how people are faring, what issues they're having, what financial support they need. So the more you can tell us and the more you can stay in touch and keep an open dialogue with us, the better. Please pass this on. Please share these thoughts and these comments with your frontline teams, with your staff, and ultimately also with your customers. Thank you again.